Welcome to the video. Every massive empire in human history was built on something completely tangible, right? Gold, oil, land. But today, the absolute highest stakes conflict on the planet is being fought over stuff you've probably never even heard of. We're talking about invisible elements hidden deep, deep within your smartphones, our defense grids, and basically the entire global infrastructure. Literally, if they just disappeared tomorrow, our reality would fundamentally alter.
We're always told the global market is free, right? That supply and demand alone dictate our reality. Well, let's shatter that illusion real quick. Because behind the curtain, a silent blacklist has been drafted. A cartel of invisible control has quietly and brilliantly cornered the absolute foundational materials of the modern world. 48 hours, just let that number sink in for a second. If this supply chain were to suddenly snap, human progress, global communication, automated infrastructure, it wouldn't just slow down. No way. It would grind to an absolute screeching halt in under 48 hours. Everything, from those advanced medical scanners to the tiny little speakers inside the phone you might be holding right now, it all depends entirely on this one hidden pipeline. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer jaw-dropping scale of this monopoly. A massive 90%. A single geopolitical gatekeeper controls 90% of these crucial, world-running materials. And the rest of the globe? They're left fighting over a measly 10%. They haven't just cornered the market. They literally locked it inside a vault and swallowed the key. So how on earth did this happen? Section 1. The monopoly by design. To understand how an entire planet became hopelessly dependent, we've got to rewind to the 1980s. Back then, the West was utterly obsessed with software innovation. It was all about chasing those immediate quarterly financial profits, fast, cheap, digital. But across the Pacific, a highly deliberate, incredibly patient, long-term strategy was set into motion. They weren't looking at the next quarter, they were looking at the next century. And they focused entirely on the heavy, dirty, unglamorous work of chemical refining. But here's the crazy catch. These rare earth elements, things with wild names like neodymium and dysprosium, they aren't actually scarce at all. You can literally find them in the dirt. But getting them out, extracting them into a usable form, is a totally toxic, grueling, and chemically hazardous nightmare. And the West? Well, they wanted clean tech. They wanted spotless cities and dirt-cheap hardware. So they willingly outsourced all that filth. They pushed the toxic extraction overseas just to keep their own backyards spotless. But in doing so, they accidentally handed over the master keys to the entire digital age. Today, one single entity holds the ultimate monopoly on the highly specialized chemical refining you actually need to make these minerals usable. You want to build a microscopic magnet, or say a stealth fighter jet? You sign their ledger. Period. Section 2. The geopolitical paywall. Just track this timeline for a second. The 1980s, we happily outsourced the dirty work. The early 2020s, under the totally plausible guise of environmental compliance, export quotas strictly tighten up. And today, a silent blacklist. Export regulations abruptly prohibit the transfer of advanced refining technology outside very specific borders. Boom! The door slams shut. Imagine the absolute sheer panic. Picture being a $1 trillion tech giant sitting in some sterile corporate boardroom. You've just invested billions into next-generation automated assembly lines, only to realize the raw, physical material required to make your revolutionary product actually function has just been placed behind a massive geopolitical paywall. The panic was incredibly real, it ran deep, and it was kept entirely hidden from the public eye. No frantic press releases were issued. Instead, these massive tech corporations just started quietly scrambling. We're talking sending private jets to the remote corners of Africa, the Australian outback, and literally exploring deep ocean floors, desperately trying to bypass this chokehold. But it is utterly futile. Why? Look at this quote. You can't just build an alternative infrastructure overnight. It takes decades of groundwork. They didn't just beat the West to the market. They own the grid itself. Section 3. The parallel tech ecosystem. We are way past a standard trade dispute here. We are actively watching the real-time architectural fracturing of human civilization. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening. On one side, you have Ecosystem 1, operating smoothly inside the established, monopolized grid. On the exact opposite side, Ecosystem 2, frantically being constructed in the shadows by trillion-dollar companies absolutely desperate to build an entirely new supply chain right from scratch. They even have a fancy buzzword for this desperate scramble. They call it strategic autonomy, which is really just a massively expensive, heavily subsidized alternative supply chain being built by Western alliances. They're literally trying to recreate decades of industrial patience in a matter of just a few years, burning through massive amounts of capital just to get a seat back at their own table. Section 4. The true cost. Look, breaking the world in half, it doesn't come for free. There are severe, real-world consequences, and it's going to radically alter the technology we use every single day. Let's break down the cascading effects here. Step 1. Scrambling for these resources naturally makes hardware less efficient. Step 2. Building completely redundant parallel supply chains that doubles production costs. Step 3. This invisible digital Cold War accelerates, embedding itself into literally every new device produced in the next decade.
And I'm going to be incredibly blunt with you here. The true financial burden of this massive global separation, it's not going to fall on the cartels. It definitely won't fall on the tech giants. They're just going to pass the margins right down the line. It falls entirely on you, the consumer. You pay the price for this divided global ledger. So the global order didn't collapse with some loud explosion or a massive kinetic war. It was forever changed by chemical elements passing through restricted shipping lanes, regulated by secret blacklists, and organized on a completely silent ledger. That right there is how the digital age was actually conquered. The next time you hold a piece of modern technology, I really want you to look past the glass. Look past that polished aluminum and all that sleek software. Think about the invisible, toxic elements inside of it that had to travel through an entirely monopolized global chokehold just to end up in your hands. So I'll leave you with this. Look past the glass. Who really controls your technology? Thank you so much for watching this video.